I recognize the member for Sandwich South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise and speak about something I'm so passionate about this morning. And I think the previous member opened up a great transition for me to begin talking about buying BC and buying local food. Now, there is so much talk from the other side of the House about being committed to agriculture, about agri-food dollars increasing, but in my view, this government has missed the boat on embracing agriculture and food production as an economic driver in this province. Now, most people across the province know somebody or also have experienced themselves a visit to the hospital. And when they get presented with food in the hospital, the reviews are not the best on the food that is served in the hospital. So we see in other jurisdictions across Canada, in the United States, that local procurement contracts are being set up with local growers and processors to bring food into the hospital system that's regionally based. So this is not a new idea. This is an idea that has been investigated and also being pursued over a decade. This government is not committed to using agriculture as an economic driver. Boy, do they love to talk about their commitment as we get close to an election, because how they run the Ministry of Agriculture under this current government is on an election cycle. And you cannot have a successful agriculture system in this province run by election cycles every 4 years. You have to be committed. You have to be committed for the long term. And so many people will know that using local food, locally processed food, is not only good for the economy in British Columbia, it's good for our health. And so yes, we can eat a cup of blueberries a day to increase our health, but when you're in the hospital and you're sick, if you're in a long-term care institution, you're frail and elderly, what you need is the best food as medicine that's available to you. So what's stopping us? Well, the Minister of Agriculture is not a champion for this idea. In fact, he was recently on Voice of BC, and he was asked if he supported the idea of procurement contracts within our hospital system where we are using taxpayer money to purchase food, which is not necessarily in BC. In fact, most likely, and in most cases, it's being imported into BC to provide food into our hospital institution food systems. He was asked whether he supported this idea. And unfortunately, the Minister of Agriculture, who is supposed to be a champion for agriculture, you would think this is the biggest cheerleader we should have for agriculture in this province, basically said, is it in the best interest of British Columbians to dictate to a hospital that they must spend more money on out-of-season products? Now, I don't know, nobody was talking about out-of-season products, and we are using tax dollars in the hospital system. So I don't know if I would use the word dictate, but we are supposed to be setting policy in this province that would support our agriculture and food system. So what are the spin-off effects from doing that? Well, you would incent food processing. This current government hasn't even been able to support a food innovation centre in the province of British Columbia, and we're one of the only provinces that doesn't have one. This idea has been talked about and talked about. If you have, for example, a requirement for applesauce in a hospital system, I went and spoke to a apple processor, and they currently are buying apples from Washington and processing them, and they're not using BC apples. And I asked this processor, if you were required to do a certain percentage of BC apples in order to get a procurement contract in the hospital system to sell your applesauce, would you switch to BC apples? And they said absolutely they would, because it creates a stable domestic market within our province. I'm not against exports. I am not against encouraging our export market, but why would you turn your back on a domestic market that basically would incent processing and growing all across the province, not just in urban British Columbia, but across the province in rural areas that might be suffering from other problems with their economies. This is a stable idea. And again, it's not my idea. This is being done all across North America. And the person that's supposed to be a champion for this sort of thing decided that, he's too much of a free enterpriser to support our taxpayer-purchased food products. So now we have a situation that's happening up in 100 Mile right now. 100 Mile was cooking their own food in their hospital system and in their extended care areas, and that kitchen is being shut down by the government, and they're going to be trucking food in from another area 300 kilometers away. This is very upsetting to the residents of 100 Mile. Why would you shut down a hospital kitchen that has the potential to use food that's being grown in that area? Now, this may be arm's length from the Minister of Agriculture, from the Minister of Health, because it's a health authority, but why would we not use our policies as a provincial government to insist that food is purchased locally and processed locally? Now, I got a very unfortunate email from a gentleman who was looking after his wife in a hospital in Vanderhoof. Now, he was buying his wife's meals because the meals within that hospital were so not appealing to his wife. So his wife is ill, she's trying to get better, and what she's being given is rethermaled mush. Is that what this government thinks is good enough for people in our province that are in the hospital system? Imported mush, rethermalized from many kilometers away. So it's not about agriculture for this government. It's not about good, healthy food. It's about getting the most for cheapest, regardless of health outcomes. Maybe if we took a step back and we started to connect the dots between the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Agriculture, we might be able to see a connection between health and food. And this is where this government is missing the boat. So I've been talking about this since I was elected in 2009. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For West Vancouver Sea to Sky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to rise today and respond to the statement by the member for Sandwich South Buying Local, Buying BC. And as a member of the agricultural industry for the last 25 years, growing 45 acres of certified organic vegetables and berries, I think I have some experience from which to speak. So beautiful British Columbia. It's more than just a motto on our license plates. British Columbia has many iconic, unique, and distinguishing geographic features that make it one of the most beautiful places on earth, from the coastal mountains to the Rockies, from the forests and rolling grasslands of the interior to, of course, the Pacific Ocean, the mighty Fraser, and the many networks of rivers, lakes, streams that run throughout British Columbia. The biodiversity of this province is simply amazing. This biodiversity means climatic conditions that produce significant opportunities for one of our most important industries. British Columbia's flourishing agri-food and seafood sectors is a major contributor to our economy. And that's why it was identified as one of the 8 key drivers of the BC Jobs Plan. It's vital to our province's economic, social, and environmental well-being. British Columbia's agricultural, food, and seafood industry is the most diverse in Canada, and most importantly, it is growing. The sector includes agriculture, fisheries, aquaculture, and food and beverage processing. Our agri-foods businesses produce more than 200 agricultural commodities, 100 seafood species, and over 1,500 companies produce processed food products. The sector also directly employs around 55,000 British Columbians, and once all the related jobs in the value chain are included, the sector is responsible for employing over 310,000 British Columbians. Many people in the province are aware of the benefits of healthy eating and healthy living for their families, including clearly the member opposite. And as a result, consumer demand is growing for fresh, local foods from sustainable sources. As the buy local trend grows, BC's agri-food producers continue to have more opportunities to supply fresh, healthy food directly to consumers. The British Columbia government is dedicated to supporting buy local initiatives. Building the local market for BC food is a key commitment to the government's agri-food and seafood strategic growth plan, which provides a roadmap to increasing provincial revenues from agri-food and seafood sector to $15 billion a year by 2020. On the local front, government has increased agriculture funding, investing $8 million in the Buy Local program, including $2 million in budget 2016. The program helps BC farmers and food processors promote their local food and seafood products through Buy Local initiatives aimed to increase consumer demand and sales of BC agri-foods. Businesses and organizations can apply for matching funds from the British Columbia government for projects to promote local foods. Without question, the passion for local foods has never been stronger. Many local businesses have benefited from the BC Buy Local program, including 40 Knots Vineyard, Hard Bite Potato Chips, Tree Island Gourmet Yogurt, Eat More Sprouts and Greens Limited, BC Blueberry Growers, as was referenced earlier, represented by the BC Blueberry Council, Single Tree Winery, Paradise Island Foods, and many, many, many more. The Buy Local program recognizes the needs and uniqueness of our province's agricultural diversity, allowing businesses to use their expertise, not necessarily government's expertise, to market British Columbian products in a way that they think is best. And as a result, representatives of BC's farmers markets, agriculture, seafood, wine, restaurant, and retail sectors all solidly support this program. We've also worked with the BC Ag Council, funded the We Heart Local campaign, which promotes BC foods in the retail sector and restaurants and connects British Columbians to their local foods in their communities, all on their smartphones. The Buy Local program has been a huge success. It supports BC food products and BC jobs.
Thank you,
BC
Member.
government's vision is for agri-food and seafood sectors to be an innovative, adaptive,
Thank you.
globally competitive sector valued by all British Columbians because, as we know, we eat to live.
Thank you, Member. Member for Saanich South.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to respond to the member across the way because, yeah, he is a farmer. He has a certified organic farm, as did I. And so it saddens me that he doesn't stand with me in this chamber and champion the same idea that I am championing. The member continues, and other members continue to talk about the numbers of dollars in agri-food. 15 billion here, this export there. You know what? Does that mean anything to the woman who's 95 years old, who's laying in a long-term care facility, residential care facility, laying in bed day after day at the end of her life, when all she has to look forward to is a good meal? Is that what our residents in British Columbia deserve? A government who continues to list off agri-food dollars here, there, and everywhere? Mrs. Smith in 100 Mile doesn't care about your agri-food dollars and your export plan. That's the bottom line for the government. Spend time on that, but also pay attention to what's going on in our province. Is that what we want our parents to eat, is reheated mush that's imported? What about this meal that came in? Is this what our parents deserve? Some unrecognizable mush on a plate with burned gravy and a vegetable that the patient couldn't recognize as peas or broccoli because it's been so overcooked. And on top of that, as a little bit of a treat for dessert, we have a pre-packaged plastic container of fruit where the largest words on this container say, "Product of China." Do we not have a strong enough food industry in British Columbia to be able to supply our hospital system with our own food? No, we don't, because this government's walked away from it. And because they've walked away from it, we've had to walk away from processing, We've had to walk away from all the multiplier effects. In the Lower Mainland alone, if we supplied 30% of our hospital, BC Food into our hospital system, which spends $50 million a year alone just on hospital meals, 30% of that would be enough incentive to get processors back up and working, to get our abattoir system figured out in this province. You cannot have an agri-food system, an agriculture system, without connecting the dots. And this government has failed to connect the dots year after year after year. And the reason why they're talking about it now, the reason why the words food security come up, and sustainability and investments and commitment
member.
to buy local is
Thank
because
you.
there's an election in less than
Thank
8
you.
months. Do not be fooled by the rhetoric of
Thank
this
you, member.
government.
Thank you.